Since it's the White Salmon Council
Here we
chambers,
go.
I can do a quick, anyone that wants to talk, just make sure you hit your star button. And then you have to kill it before someone else talks, or
Got it.
that's the only way anyone on TV can, or the
Okay.
Zoom can hear anything.
Okay.
And then do we, if those are empty seats, should we have the alternates sit up here? I mean, I
We
feel
can.
like if they're all
I was
here-
just about to
Yeah,
say,
I think
if,
you guys should.
Yeah, please come up and join.
if Doug does.
It's
Walking down.
Oh, cool.
okay, so let's proceed to any modifications, additions to the agenda. Any of our board members? Okay, let's proceed. Any public comments? There's step back. Grant is here
And Doug is.
and Doug is here. Great. Guys, come on up to the table here, Doug.
Great, Doug, come over here, Doug.
Yeah.
We need another chair on this side.
Why don't you sit on the other side, Doug, or one of you? Okay. Okay, so we've got a full board, no modifications to the agenda. Anybody from the public want to talk a little bit? Okay, if not, we'll get into the executive reports, but before I do that, I'd like to acknowledge that Senator King has joined us today. Senator from state of Washington, and he's been a strong supporter of this project. And I know all of us very much appreciate you, and I personally very much appreciate you. I wish we had, one of your relatives over on the other side of the river that we're working on that. Okay, so let's move into the executive reports. I've got something just to kind of mention. First off, I appreciate all the commissioners and the alternates for your willingness to serve our community on this very important board. We have a unique opportunity to establish something that will truly impact the lives of our community for the next 100 years. We're going to do something that very few have done in the last 40 to 50 years, and that is to build and operate a locally government-owned bridge by a government agency that, as of a week ago, didn't exist. So what we're about to do typically takes an ODOT, a WashDOT, or a Federal Highways Commission to get done. And all of us in this room are the ones that are going to make this happen. So that's kind of pretty special. We have a few interim rules to guide us along the state and federal laws, but we need to establish our own set of policies and procedures. We need to figure out how we're going to get a $520 million bridge designed and built while we raise the needed funds to do so. It's up to us to figure this out. We're the responsible group of people that either will make this happen or not. If we fail, it's because of us. I personally never failed, and I don't plan to do so here. I'm sure you feel the same way. The bi-state working group, along with the port actions taken thus far, have positioned this effort very well. As an example, we have a solid estimate and a schedule. We have a management contractor on board, staffed with qualified talent. We have about 100 million of the 520 million authorized, with plans for another 70 to 120 million TIFIA loans from tolls. We are now negotiating face-to-face with the treaty tribes. We now have the attention of ODOT and fisheries on our long overdue biological opinion. Development is underway to have a competition and award a progressive design build contract to be in place by January or February of this next year. This board's going to face many challenges, one being the realization that we'll be expending approximately $2 million a week as we really push out on this project. So it's going to be important that our board is a decision-making board that can make decisions very quickly with all of the facts that we can gather, but time is going to be the essence when you're burning through $2 million a week. I'm absolutely convinced we're positioned for success. If the people in this room or on the Zoom today can't get it done, nobody's going to get it done. And I firmly believe that. And I'll tell you, I think we've got a very strong board, very strong alternate. I I got all the confidence in the world that we're gonna knock this out, and we'll show others that we can in fact get something done. With that, Jake, would you like to say anything?
We're learning the new PA system. I just primarily wanted to address our alternates. Well, you were appointed by the commissioners as alternates. We think of you as, we want your opinions. We want you to be involved. We want you at the meetings. Because just because you're not voting every time doesn't mean everything you know, and the reasons that we chose you for your experience and your knowledge are very valuable. So we want you all along the way throughout this. And with that, I think Mike said it all.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Mike,
Well, hi, guys. My name is Marla Kiefler. I am a newly seated commissioner on the authority, but I'm also the mayor for White Salmon. I've been involved in the bi-state working group now for a few years and just passionate about this project and how integral I think it is to the success of our Washington side communities, but the whole gorge. So it's great, as Mike said, to see these new faces at the table. And I know these meetings feel more formal, but I look forward to all of us getting to know each other and working together in new ways to move the project forward.
Again, I'm Mike Fox, and I've been associated with the Bi-State Working Group. I'm also commissioner from Hood River Port. And just tickled to be involved in this thing. I'm looking forward to working with everybody.
And Mike and I are the co-interim chairs or vice chairs. And so my name's Jacob Anderson. And when I'm not a commissioner on this board, I'm also the Klickitat County Commissioner.
my name is Arthur Babitz. I have been on the Bi-State Working Group, and before that, I was on the earlier attempt to build a bridge back in 2007. So I've been working on this for quite some time. I am also a commissioner for District 2 in Hood River County, and I'm thrilled to be here. One comment I do want to make, I think it's probably appropriate time, is to remind everybody that while many of us are elected officials, we're not here representing the bodies that we were elected from. We're here representing our community. Our counties have chosen us to represent the community at large. And so while we all have, or many of us have other titles, those are not relevant here. Instead, we are here to represent our communities.
Hey, Grant Polson. I have a business in Hood River. I'm also on the city council.
Catherine Thomas, excited to be here as well. I am part of an environmental consulting group.
Jake Edwards, I'm an alternate, my day job, Hood River County GIS coordinator.
See if I can get this work. There we go. Doug Gibson. I'm the CEO of Mad Adams Fruit. So just a local fruit packer in the area. Yeah, excited to be a part of this. The bridge really means a lot to our employees, our growers, and really our whole community. We ship fruit out and bring fruit in on that bridge. And so without it, I wouldn't have business. So.
Eric Wilson, Klickitat County, and I'm an architect. And so part of my interest in being involved here is not only the necessity and the practical aspects of the bridge, but looking at it as an opportunity for these communities to really say something about who we are going into the future. It's a once in a century opportunity, right?
My name is Seth Gilchrist. I am a mechanical engineer and software developer, live in White Salmon. I'm an alternate on the Washington side. And I'm also a planning commissioner for the city of White Salmon as well. So I'm really excited to be here. Thanks.
Nathan Duvall, I'm an alternate from Hood River side of the project, and I'm excited to get to work with everybody and try to make something really come together.
Hi, I'm Debbie Smith-Wagar. I am the finance director for the Port of Hood River, and under the interim rules, I'm your finance director until you vote to change that. So here I am.
Mike Shannon, I'm with HNTB. We are the owner's rep for the project. We're here to help deliver the project, make sure you get what you deserve to get, and we get it in a timely manner and under budget. And we're here to help you do that.
Okay, so moving down along.
Thank you. Kelly O'Grady Smith, and I'm here to support the Bridge Authority, working with Mike and team. So I look forward to getting to know everyone.
Also, electronically today is Kevin Greenwood. And Kevin, can you introduce yourself? You're on mute. Okay, so we tried that. Kevin is the executive director from the port, and by the interim rules, he's going to be our executive director until such time that we go ahead and hire somebody. So he and Mike Shannon are going to be working very closely together, and we're going to ask them to do a division of responsibility document that'll be part of the interagency agreement going forward here. So with that, let's move down in the other executive reports. Mike, do you want to kind of introduce the topics and talk about which ones we'll talk about today or not?
So this being our first meeting, we're not going to have everything on the agenda, but we've tried to start this agenda out with all the components that we'll have. We're going to go through the executive report. I'll talk about the bridge update report right now. That will transition into an executive director report as we move forward. We've got some consent agenda items. No committee reports right now because we don't have any committees, but as we work to set those up, and you'll hear some information on that today, then we'll have some committee reports as we move forward that we'll bring forward to the group. Presentations, we do have 3 presentations. One is just a general project overview. Some of us know all of it. Some of us are brand new. So we're going to bring everybody up to speed and give you a briefing. I would offer to any of the new members, if you want to go out to lunch or spend an hour getting a briefing on the project individually, I'd be more than happy to meet with any of you. Just let me know and I'll sit down with you and kind of bring you up to speed on where we are. So we're also going to hear from our communications group. Again, that's just going to be a high level, what we've been working on, kind of some of the things we're going to be working on going forward. And then what we're calling an organizational readiness. And that is just the discussion right now around how we can help to organize the group, maybe stand up some committees that can help us be nimble and flexible as far as making some decisions related to the project. And you'll hear more about that. And we'll probably have some discussion related to that topic when we do that presentation. No unfinished business because it's the first meeting. New business continuing, there's some information items. I'll talk about those in just a second. And then there's a list of upcoming action items. Those don't require anything. We're just putting those on there to let you know what things will be coming up. And you'll hear more about those in the upcoming meetings. And they'll be moved up to either consent agenda items or new action items as we move forward. And then we'll do at the end of the meeting, just confirmation of any directives that you've given staff that we need to implement. And then we're going to try to keep on here community events where you'll have an opportunity to go out to the public and meet with the public when we do our community events for the project. And an executive session as we need that, we'll implement that. And that'll be the end of the meeting for today. So any questions before I go through the executive director?
So we have on our consent agenda several of the items that are organizational, but then we have a presentation which is on, as I understand, by your expert on how to set up an organization like this. And I'm wondering if we're getting sort of a chicken and egg problem of things getting in reverse order here.
No, sorry. No, the presentation today is more on like the committees that potentially are needed. There's administrative things that we're setting up that you're not going to hear about today. Those will be more just discussion as we set them up, like email addresses and physical address and those types of things. The presentation today is more going to be geared around committees
and decision-making going forward related to kind of committee organization of the group, not so much the bylaws and the administrative functions of the group.
So the issues I want to make sure that we talk about are things like how do we track down and understand what money we have and how we can spend money? How do we establish relationship with whoever we're contracting with for administrative and financial services, legal services, insurance? I see some of those are in the consent agenda, which is usually for things that just zoom through without discussion. What's the thinking on how we get to talk about those issues?
So before we get to consent agenda, that was one of the topics and part of my report was if you want to move any of the items out of consent down to the action items under new business, we can do that and then have more of an open discussion if you don't think they need to be on the consent. So when we get to that point, that was going to be an opportunity for the board to move items down so that we can have discussion about them under the action items under new business.
And the you guys must have a lot of fun working with the system. Yeah. Okay. So when do we get to talk about, or under which item are we talking about money?
I do not have that on here today. That is something we can move and put on to the 24th. Or we could bring it up during the new business discussion.
So what I have is actually just this very simple request, which is that we ask Debbie to do the research for us, because I'm sure no one knows the answer today. So I think it's more just the matter of us having the item so that we can recognize that this is a major question, because we're going to be interviewing attorneys and we don't know how we're going to pay them, as an example. So if we can simply put on the agenda someplace asking Debbie to research that for us.
Yep, and what we'll do at the end of the meeting is record that as direction from the board. So at the end, we'll take all of those. We'll mark that down as direction for staff to go in and research that and bring it back to you at the next meeting.
Okay, so if you look at the executive report, review and what open action items, there is none today. The budget report, the intent of that is that every second meeting of the month, we will have a report out of where we are on the budget, not only the yearly budget, but the big budget. And that'll be broken down next time. Brian will be here and we'll take some time to go through the reports. Of course, you'll get it in advance, but he will explain how to read it and some of the nuances of the reports. That's where we start to get into the more of the detailed discussion about where you want to go. I think we're prepared to talk about two of the key issues today as we go through them. One is the insurance, liability insurance, and the second one will be getting us legal representation. And I believe we do have a funding source for that. So that won't hold us up as far as getting it established. What we do with it long-term is going to be up to us of how we want to fund that and where it goes and so on. But we're prepared to make that issue at least go away for the first year. Okay. So Mike, why don't you take us through the consent agenda? Let's spend, since this is our first meeting, let's spend just a little bit of time on each one to make sure that everybody doesn't have a problem, or if you've got a question, bring them up and we'll spend a little time talking about it.
If you don't mind, let me go back and give you some informational items. And then we'll jump onto the consent. So just a couple of things that have happened I want to make sure everyone's aware of. We did receive 3.6 million raise grant. We also did submit the SS4A grant for $1 million. That'll go kind of along with that raise grant that went in on Friday. We have received one of the action items of the CFA was to get affirmation from all the directors. That has been done. We've got written affirmation from all the directors and the alternates. The Secretary of State, we have sent the CFAs, the signed CFAs to both secretaries of state for Oregon and Washington. We did receive something back from Oregon confirming that they received it. We didn't get an email or anything back, but we have sent it to Washington. And then we have started at the Bi-State Working Group meeting, where some discussions about a .gov site. We have started working on that. Once we get that a little farther along, we will bring that back for any decisions that need to be related to that. So that is underway, is getting through that. Some of the upcoming action items, one will be the IGA between the port and the board that will have some additional discussions. We anticipate the meeting, I think, at the 24th of July to have that meeting, that discussion. The board will need to establish a recurring meeting, date and time and location for the meeting. So again, would like to do that at the 24th meeting. Public records policy, you'll see in the packet, I think there's some draft stuff in there for you to look at. We'll bring that to you on the 24th for some decisions on how you want to move forward with that. It should look very familiar. It's pretty much Hood River counties. The also intergovernment coordination policy is another thing that we'll bring back to you. That's just something that was identified in the CFA that needs to be established. That's just how you're going to work with the ODOT, WashDOT, and FHWA. So and other stakeholder partners. So we'll bring that back to you. We are going to take the interim rules and advance those based on some of the decisions that are made today to start advancing to kind of a more formal set of bylaws for the group. We'll bring the first draft of that back to you on the 24th as well for you to take into consideration. And then reimbursement is another item that we'll need to take up at the 24th. Right now there is no reimbursement for the board until you all take action on determining what that will be. So we'll need to work on developing some of that, something for you to discuss at the meeting on the 24th. And then also the procurement contracting roles is another big one that we want to bring back to you. So there's a lot of things coming up as we get this established and set up. There will be kind of a handful of them as we go through the meetings that we'll bring up and allow everybody to work through. So, yes, sir.
So, it's important to me that as we involve new commissioners and the public in this, that we make an even greater effort to avoid acronyms or to explain acronyms, because this is so much technical stuff, and we have people watching on Zoom, and we want the community to feel like they're part of this. So I'll start by asking SS4A, what is that?
Yes, and as an engineer, I will commit to working on that. It is a very bad habit of ours. The architect in the room probably agrees, and others who work with the engineering field, I'm sure, get frustrated with us. SS4A is Safe Streets for All. It's the grant acronym. So, and then SOS, I think I actually spelled out, which is the Secretary of State. So, but feel free at any time if I throw one out by accident and you're like, which one is he talking about? We have multiple ones that actually mean different things and they have the same initials. So feel free to ask me or stop me at any time. So thank you.
Okay, so on the consent package, did anybody have any questions or concern on the minutes, even though we don't have an official set of minutes of this one? What we're talking about is the last set of minutes from the last bi-state, and since several of us were on that, does anybody have any comments on that? Oh. Okay, interim co-chairs, we took a look at the interim rules, and our interpretation of it is that for a period of 6 months, 3 months, and 3 months, unless we decide otherwise, both of the co-chairs from the bi-state working group will assume that responsibility on this new agency. So right now it's Jake and myself, and we've had a discussion and we came to an agreement that I would be the chair for the first 3 months. And then you would take over through the second 3 months, unless again, you know, we have a discussion and we want to do something different than that prior to the end of the year. So that's what that one is about. Anybody have comments or concerns on that? Yes, sir.
Me again. I do. And, you know, obviously I've been working with both of you and I think you're tremendous and I enjoy working with you and I think you're great in these roles. It occurs to me, though, that there are two things which I would like to see us accomplish symbolically. Number one is I would like to see this group led by Washington State initially, so that we make a statement that this is a sharp break with the history of Oregon being in charge of this whole process. And secondly, I have some concern about people concluding that this is an extension of the port running the process. And I'm wondering if your role as a port commissioner will be confusing to people and will lead to the narrative that this is just another port-led operation. So I don't think, I'm perfectly fine with you guys running the meeting today and running the meeting for a while, but I would like to have a discussion at some point, maybe within the next couple of meetings, about that and see if we want to make a change or if we want to continue with this path as described in the CFA.
Other comments from other members? Shall we put it on the, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna, I guess, follow up procedurally. And I think Arthur's bringing forward a good discussion point that, or just raising awareness that we treat this truly as interim. So I don't know if there's anything in the way it was drafted, if we need to be pulling this from consent agenda, or if what's in the consent agenda as you read it still would work for both of them being interim, but just there's an expectation that we're going to be talking about this and revisiting it. Like, do we, maybe I'm looking to staff too, but if we are changing something or want to have this be something that's brought back forward, do we need then to take the action? Are we looking for feedback of whether we want to pull this or keep it included and we're all going to take a vote of it is what it is, or no, it doesn't pass?
Yeah, and there is an option. January 1st, the board is to make a decision on the future co-chairs. So you can either leave this as it is for the first 6 months as we kind of get organized. Or if you want to make a change, then I think we should probably pull it and have a discussion at some point. So we could go forward with what we have right now, and then in a future meeting, we could put it on as an action item to discuss the change if we want to make a change later.
So you have to be really fast with these. I can go either way with this. I am not hard over on this. So I wanted to bring it up as a discussion item and see how other people felt. I called Mike. Oh. Now you, I called Mike.
The issue is Zoom, you hear nothing.
I called Mike and started to talk to him about this and then realized that, you know, he explained to me what the discussion was. And I thought rather than talking to you and creating a serial meeting, which we're not supposed to do, I would simply bring it up as a discussion item. Like I said, I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but I am concerned about the optics. And it may be that it may be perfectly satisfactory for us to say this is interim. January 1st, we're going to elect officers, or maybe we want to do something before then, but I don't have a problem with us leaving it as it is on the consent agenda, because at any point the commissioners have the authority to make this change. So I don't think we need to change what's on paper, since I certainly don't think we're doing anything today. So I think we can all just think about it, and then next meeting decide if we want to have a public discussion on it or not. And then we can take action at a future meeting, or we can wait until January to take action, in my opinion.
So what do we, go ahead.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value in taking the continuity from the bi-state working group and carrying that forward. Well, some of us that are new get our feet under us, start to understand some of the acronyms and move forward. I'm sensitive to the optics, but I also don't think that those have a broad impact on the bigger goal. And having that continuity of what's been done and what needs to continue to be done is probably more important at this point.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I guess the one thing I would say, and I agree with what's been shared, and I think some of us that have been on the bi-state working group have been very attuned to the symbolism or perceptions that are already in the community and how we continue to reinforce a shift. So I guess one thing that comes to mind as you brought forward kind of this idea of we should revisit this is, would it not be also simple to just say that Commissioner Anderson starts for the first 3 months as he sends daggers my way? And then if we don't revisit it and the other commissioners are still getting up to speed, at least it's sending a message that that first stretch is a shift. And then Commissioner Fox steps in at the 3-month window if we are comfortable with that. And we do as planned, we just kind of do musical chairs, would be one approach, assuming they're both on board.
I'm absolutely fine with that.
So why do I feel that I'm the one who's not?
Okay, everyone else step back.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want, I can do it for the first 3 months if the optics matter. It's just as easy. I've run many meetings in my life. But that just means I'm gonna delegate most of the work to you. With that, then we can't approve the consent agenda item without making a change. Do I hear a motion to pull consent agenda item B from the consent agenda and add it under new business?
I would make that motion.
I like that.
Second.
These are gonna get hard to get used to, but I actually really like it because you can't talk over someone.
It helps with Robert's rules, make sure everybody gets a chance.
Well, I guess I'm running then. All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify.
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Are there any changes, other changes to the consent agenda, or is there any discussion on any consent agenda items?
I had a question about sorry. I guess it's for staff. So the physical address, even if it starts as this, but then a new office space is established, is that a change that's pretty quick to implement? It's not like by locking in the physical address right now, and then some of this is just similar to kind of the discussion around the chairs.
One thing we did talk about was using that as just a physical address for now, and then having a mailing address be a PO box that would be more consistent and last longer term, but I don't think physical address causes any problems that I've been made aware of. So we can change that whenever, at whatever time we need to.
So at the final bi-state working group meeting, we had a brief discussion about the concept of the alternates being at the table with us. And that seems to be the way we set it up. And I like this. Did we agree that we're going to do it this way? Because I thought that that was kind of an open item. I proposed it, but I'm not sure that we had agreed on that.
I thought we had consensus at the last
Oh, okay,
meeting.
great.
Does that work for the alternates and everyone else? To keep everyone at the table? All right, perfect. With that, is there any other questions with regards to the consent agenda? Please.
At the last bi-state, we talked about the term commissioner versus director. In the interim rules, it has us as directors. Are we using directors? Are we using commissioners?
Did you read your agenda packet?
Yes.
So I believe the conversation was we would use the term commissioners, and that's what's on our consent agenda. If there's anyone who would like to change that, we can pull that item for further discussion. How do you feel?
Chair. Between the last meeting and this meeting, HNTP got a hold of Bill Oley, outside counsel for the port, but we've used him in the past. He did some research on the two, and it's totally up to us. There's no real driver either way. So if we feel more comfortable with commissioner, we can use commissioner.
I'm glad we spent a bunch of money researching this.
I would make a motion to approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second.
There is a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as amended. With that, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. We will now move into presentations, and we will begin with the general project overview. Right?
All right, and just, I'll do the general project overview. Anna Moran. How do I say her? Moram, sorry, messed up her name. We'll virtually do the communications presentation. And then Greg Holsizer is here in person and he'll do the governance organizational readiness discussion. So, all right, Kelly. And I'm going to go through this fairly quickly. We're a little bit ahead of schedule, but I know some of these other ones are going to take a little longer. So I'm going to try to keep us ahead of schedule. But if at any point you want to stop and ask a question, please do so. Or write it down and I can follow up with you after the meeting. So, all right. Go ahead. Nope, wrong one. Sorry, Kelly was trying to move us along even faster. There you go. All right, go ahead. So just very quickly, there were a number of alternatives done during the planning NEPA phase of the project. They looked at multiple options actually up and down the river. There were two primary options that were moved forward. The blue line, which was just upstream of the existing bridge, was called EC3. The orange line just downstream of the bridge was EC2. Ultimately, EC2 was the selected preferred alternative that'll be finalized once the NEPA is all completely finalized. Main reason for that is just the impacts to the north side. There's a number of cultural resource impacts in that area with fish processing site. There actually is a very nice corridor right between the TFAS site and the existing bridge where the orange up treaty fishing access site, which is the TFAS site. Is just to the downstream side on the Washington side. There's a nice piece of vacant property in between the existing bridge and that site. And that's where they kind of tucked in the bridge on the Washington side. So that alternate will be our preferred alternate going through, probably carrying into design. I don't see that changing much when we get into design, either horizontally or vertically, just because there really is not a lot of room to make any modifications. So go ahead. This is a typical section. This again is somewhat draft, but is part of the preferred alternative. We're going to go to 12-foot lanes, one in each direction with 8-foot shoulders, and a 12-foot bike lane on the downstream side. Part of what we're doing with the RAISE grant is looking at how and where this ties in at the end to make sure it's a well thought out plan. So we'll be advancing this discussion as we kind of implement this RAISE grant that we just received. So the Washington side, as a tie-in on the Washington side, Washington typically starts with roundabouts. That's their preferred type of intersection. And then they go from there. You really have to prove that a roundabout won't work before they'll actually do something else. If you're not familiar with modern roundabouts, they are a lot different than the old traffic circles. They will accommodate truck traffic. Knowing the freight movements here, that will be something that we will pay attention to because not all trucking companies like roundabouts, and for good reason. So we will need to make sure that it accommodates them. But Washington does a lot of them. They've actually got some pretty advanced design with them. So that'll be on the Washington side. On the, I'm sorry. Yep. Yep, and that's why I brought that up, because I knew as the trucking company representative here, you would have questions related to that. So that will be something that we work through, and there's some pretty good modeling that you can do to show how those can be accommodated. So on the Oregon side, we will basically tie into upgrade slightly, but tie into the existing signalized intersection that's there on the Oregon side today. So just wanted to show you kind of the tie-ins. They come up a lot. On the Washington side, it is just slightly west of where the existing bridge ties in today because of the curve at the end of the bridge. So it's almost at the same location. So minimal impacts to really any properties, but just want to make sure everybody was aware of what we're doing on the tie-ins. Go ahead. Currently where we're at, we're still working on the FEIS and ROD. It's been a long process, longer than probably it needs to take, but that's where we are. We have done this year, I think with the help of some of the bi-state working group members, really ramped up the importance of getting this done and prioritizing this with some of the local agencies. I think unfortunately, because we did not have a lot of funding, the push to make this a priority was not there. It has been in the last year made a much bigger priority with all agencies involved. And I think they have responded. We are expecting the biological opinion to be done by the 1st of September. I am regularly meeting once a month now with higher level staff in ODOT and FHWA. We actually have a meeting tomorrow to just make sure that this thing is moving forward and it stays as a priority. The bigger piece of this is the Section 106 MOA. That has a component that deals with the treaty tribes, both with the MOA with the treaty tribes, but independently as part of the traditional cultural properties. So we are working with them on that. I did email all of the treaty tribes to ask them if they could provide some type of letter that says, hey, this is going well, we're moving forward, it's just a process. I did hear back from Yakima today that they don't see that as a problem to give us a letter that states something like that. So they said check back in about 2 weeks and I will follow up with them to try to continue to get those letters. So I don't think I know we will not get through the process before MPDG and VIP multimodal programs, discretionary grants. Before we get those done, and then the BIP, which is Bridge Investment Program, the next set of grants, we will not be finished with this process. It's just a timely process, but getting those letters, I think, will help send a message that everybody is working in good faith to get that done. We also do have letters of support from Yakima Nation, Nez Perce, and Umatilla on the project, and Warm Springs. We're just waiting on confirmation. They were supposed to vote on it last Monday. I'm just waiting on confirmation and getting the letter from them. So that should be happening any day. So that would mean that all 4 treaty tribes have sent us letters and allow us to use their logo in support of the project. So project schedule, what you see on the top was the planning level study out of NEPA. We are looking to try to advance that schedule by 1 year. We want to be completed with the project by October of 2029. We want to start construction in 2025. We think it's roughly a 3.5 to 4 year schedule. A lot of this is contingent on funding. So we are not there yet with the funding, and we need to, as a group, continue to make sure everyone is aware that just because they've put a little bit of money on it does not mean we are done and they don't have to put any additional funding. We will need additional funding to make this project happen. But we are doing everything we can, and that's part of the reason in bringing the Progressive Design Build team on, because that brings a designer as well as a contractor. And I think it will be very powerful between now and 2025 to be able to sit with the contractor at the table and be able to say, this is the people that are going to build this project, and they are sitting here waiting on you to fund this project. So that's where our goal is to get there. We think the next big ask is really with Oregon in 2025, as well as Washington will be when they do their next big funding packages. And that'll be our big opportunities to get the rest of the funding. So we need to position ourselves to be ready for that.
I think to add to that, this has got to be our year for the federal push. Because if we don't make it this year, we've got to wait 2 full years. So need to make sure we're getting the $200 million or as close to it as we possibly can. My feel is that if we don't get that, our 2029 date is in serious jeopardy.
No, and you are correct in that. And we will be doing a more detailed funding presentation at the July 24th meeting. Go ahead. This is just a funding cash flow chart. We'll get into this in more detail at the meeting on the 24th, but the yellow line just shows expenditures. The green shows what we've got allocated or committed to the project. And then the red boxes are when we need additional funds to come in order to meet that 2029 schedule. So just, as you can see on there, really in the middle to the end of 2025, we start to run out of money. So it is extremely important that we are able to, and I must have used another acronym, so sorry. No, did I? Okay. No, but we are, we're just tracking this so that we can better explain that, even though we do have funding, the timing of it is extremely important in order to keep the project on schedule. This is, I sent an email out about a dashboard. I think all of you got emails with another password and another email that everybody will have to use. But what it does is give you access to our SharePoint site, and we have an external site there with a dashboard where you can at any time go in and look at the funding. You can break it down to every piece where the funding is going. You can see by subtask and task on ours. So we will have that up and open anytime you want to see that. It will be available for you. Yes, sir.
Is this public information?
Sorry. The hard copies will be in the reports, and that's the budget report, part of the budget report that we'll do every second meeting. The dashboard right now is internal to the working group, the agency. But if we want to make that public, we can look at the parts we want to make public. We were going to put it out in the meeting, so we weren't going to do both, but we can do if we want to do that. So, yeah. The wrong one. So project funding, right now, the target funding source and how we've been breaking down the project is we want to get 125 from Washington, 125 from Oregon, 200 from the feds through any number of grant sources. And what we've had discussions with them is that we're going to submit for everything, and they can determine how they want to put that 200 together, which is something that they've said they were interested in doing, as well as multi-year funding for the project, which is something else that they're looking to do. So we are writing our grant applications to have that flexibility built into it. We're also looking at local contributions, which is going to be done primarily, most likely through a TIFIA loan, which is a low interest federal loan. And that's part of the reason in the toll increase that's coming in September. And again, you'll hear a lot more detail on that at the July 24th meeting. Current funding right now, this is the funding sources that we currently have on the project to date. We have fully spent the Oregon planning grant. We have spent $3 million of the Washington planning grant. We have not, the US DOT planning grant 2020 is a build grant. We have not started billing against that yet. So that full $5 million is available. And then the ARPA grant, I think we're right at about $1.5 million on the ARPA grant that we've spent. So it, as you can see, is very important that we get this 15 million from Washington. I actually have a meeting with Washington on Thursday with WashDOT's finance group to find out how and when the funds will flow. And I'll bring that back once we have more details. Any questions on funding?
I talked to Mike earlier, and he said to me that not only if we don't get the funding this year, not only does the schedule slip, but also the budget will be significantly impacted. And he indicated that it could be $50 to $60 million of additional cost if we don't keep on this schedule.
Yeah, I said, if we don't hit the 2029 date, which kind of, if you work backwards, if we don't get the money by when we need it to start construction, I could very, very easily see a 2-year delay. And a two-year delay out that far, you're probably talking $50 to $75 million very easily. And that just assumes that there's no huge increase in inflation. It's just 4% on that whole mass moving out a year to 2 years. So it's really important that we get the money. Yes, sir.
Executive prerogative to give the good senator all the time in the world.
It's the button there.
I'm in trouble. There we go. Anyway, thank you. I apologize for interrupting your meeting. But seriously, if you don't get a good answer on that 15 million, let me know. Because it should be available. And we're working diligently to move the other two 30 million, particularly the last into the next biennium and not 2 biennia. So with that, but this is an exciting day. That's why I'm here. This is what I've been looking forward to. So I want to say thank you to all of you for your willingness to take the time and volunteer and be here, because this is how this bridge is going to get built. And you may be happy with 2029, but I'd be a hell of a lot happier with 2028. And I can tell you, the sooner you build it, the cheaper it's going to be. I have all the confidence in HTMB, and I think I got those acronyms right this time. But thank you all very much for your willingness to do this. This is how the bridge is going to get built. So with that, I'll take my leave and thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, Senator. Shall we move on to communications? Or do you got more? Okay. All right. Oh.
Hi, everyone. I just want to make sure it is my turn to give the communications presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. I'm Anna Merrim. I work for JLA Public Involvement, and I'm just going to get my presentation up here. All right. Can everyone see my presentation?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. All right. So as I said, I'm Anna Merrim. I have met and worked with a few of you in the past couple months, and it's been a pleasure. I really look forward to meeting the rest of you here in the coming months. So I'm going to give a quick overview of what JLA is and how it's connected to this project, and then I'm going to go through some of our goals over the next few months and how we plan to support you all. So JLA is a Portland-based public involvement firm, and we are contracted under HRWSBA to provide public engagement help for this project and communications support. And so really what that means is facilitating open houses, getting the website up and managing that, and doing media outreach, and then everything in between. And so really our goal with all of that is to give the public a chance to learn about the project and give feedback. And then for us to go through that feedback, deliver it to you all in a way that makes sense and that is easy for you to digest, and then use that to inform your actions. So that's our goal. And that's why we're here. And it's we've been on the project now for, I believe, over a year. Mike can correct me if that's incorrect. But it's been great to work really closely with Michael's team and the HRWSBA folks, the Bi-State Working Group. And so we really look forward to supporting this effort going forward with the new Bridge Authority. And so the point people in terms of communications, as I understand it, you all will be organizing committees and there will be a communications committee lead that we will be working with most closely. So we'll leave that to you guys to decide. On the JLA team, Jessica Pickle is the project manager for this project for JLA. She was not able to be in today, but I'm sure if you haven't met her already, you will soon. And so she handles JLA's contract and a lot of the big picture items. She has over 10 years of public involvement experience and she's just a joy to work with on community events and things like that. I'm Anna. I am a strategic communications project manager, and I have a background of journalism and economic development. So it's been really fun to apply those skills on this project. I, do everything writing related. And so whether that's writing press releases, doing media outreach, pulling together the newsletters that go out to folks, that's me. I'm your person for that. And then Stacy Zurcher is our outreach coordinator. And so what that means is she really she spearheads all of our local community events and gets those together. And then she also has like 10 years of public involvement experience. And so she is a real pro at going through a lot of those public comments and packaging them for you in a way that's really helpful. So that's our team. And some of our goals for the next couple months are, number one, introduce you all as the new authority commissioners and tell the community, why this new body is taking over and what your mission is. And then number two, we want to just continue to provide regular, consistent updates on the progress with the project, especially including funding. Because what we've heard from a lot of folks in the community is, they just don't believe that this is really going to happen because there have been so many attempts over the last few decades. And so we're really hoping to say like, hey, this is the time it's different. And this time it's really going to happen. And so number three, that goes kind of into this idea of building trust, right? And really most importantly, we want to build trust with the Washington side, because we know that a lot of the folks on the Washington side have felt left out in previous attempts. And so we want to make sure that they feel included and that they understand that this effort is really a bi-state effort. And so here's some of the tools that we use to make sure the public understands what's going on. Number one, the website. If you haven't visited already, please head to hoodriverbridge.org whenever you get the chance. So this is our main repository of information, updates. There is a timeline there. There's bridge history. There's just a lot of really basic information as well as renderings about the project. And then there is a page for news, a newsletter sign up area. And then also the Bridge Authority has its own page on this site. And so this will serve as the main website for the Bridge Authority. And we add to this or update it probably like 2 or 3 times a week. And so we really want it to be a living, breathing tool that people can use all the time. And so if you see anything on here that needs to be updated, please let us know and we'll get right on it. In terms of social media, we use Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Facebook and Instagram are certainly our most, active channels. And what we will be probably working with our communications lead on is sometimes we get some salty comments or some legitimate questions, in the comments, and we'll just need to work together to formulate a response and make sure we're answering people's questions and really engaging in a natural way on these very public squares. And then we've been doing a lot of media releases lately. And so sometimes those aren't very often. And then like in the last couple of weeks, we're working on like 3 or 4. And so it really, really depends in terms of the cadence of those, but we have a very large list of reporters and also like community boards that we push those out to. And then we also post those updates on our website. And we are we've contracted with a local video production company, Story Gorge, to produce these really nice, really well-produced, high-quality videos every quarter. And so I believe one of the first ones they did was featured Commissioner Mike Fox and Mayor Marla Keither, and focused on, hey, you know, where has this project been? Where is it now? And what does it look like going forward? And so some really just another way for the public to become engaged and really understand the project and kind of humanize it a little. And so those have been really good. And we have one more focused on tolling coming out here soon. And then in terms of monthly pushes, we have a newsletter that is sent out via email, and that goes to, I believe, around 1,500 folks who've signed up, and we are getting more signups all the time. And so that is probably our number one way to push information out to as many people as possible, like immediately. And so that is a tool that we can use, you know, that we are using with those monthly newsletters, but also we use that channel to advertise our open house events around tolling last month. And so that's just a really great tool that if we have any news that needs to get out ASAP, then that's the best way to do it. And we also have been producing a kind of a dual piece that's a handout or a display that's almost like an abbreviated version of the newsletter. And so it's just all the latest updates. And so that's been a great tool as well. In terms of, you know, face-to-face events and getting out there with the public, as I mentioned, we had 2 tolling open houses, I think last day of May and then early June. And so one of those was in Hood River, one of those was in White Salmon. Many of you were there helping us with that. And those events were great. We had a lot more people at the White Salmon open house because they really do rely on the bridge on that side of the river, as you know, a lot more. And so those were just great events. And we received a lot of feedback from folks that we're in the process of pulling together a report that we will share with you that really summarizes all of that feedback and, you know, in some sort of very clear, like here are the clear trends that people were saying. And so we're going to, one of our goals this summer is to make sure we are responding appropriately to that feedback and the questions people were asking. And then coming up, and actually just this last Friday, Mike Fox, Debbie, and Mike Shannon and I were all at the Hood River First Friday. And I think we probably, between passing out flyers and talking to people, probably I would say around 200 people we engaged with that on that First Friday event. And so it was a really great way to get out there and just talk to people and answer their questions. And the feedback was pretty positive, even when we were talking about increased tolls on the existing bridge. And so some events that we plan to table at in the next couple months, White Salmon Farmers Market and the Huck Fest in Bingen, and then a couple other events as well. We really want to make sure we have an event with the Spanish speaking community, and we want to make sure we're talking to folks who speak Spanish as well. We have plans to do about 4 pop-up events to introduce you all to the community. And so that would be like a few of you hanging out at a brewery or a coffee shop. And so people could come in and talk about the project over coffee or over a beer. And so we will talk more about that in the coming months. And we also have plans to hold a public event once the progressive design build contractor is set. And that, you know, we want to say, hey, this is a chance for the public to learn which elements of the bridge will be up for discussion in terms of design. And so I think that will be a really fun discussion. And so just a preview of some of the things we'll be throwing at you in the next few months here first, it's got to be public records law training and making sure we're following the law and that you are all comfortable with all of those things. I'm sure many of you, if you are public officials, you're already familiar with a lot of these things. So we will touch base on that. And then we'll also be conducting interviews that will inform a lot of our early communications, whether that's on social media or website or even in media releases, basically just asking like, hey, what is your personal connection to this bridge? Why did you want to be on this bridge authority? Things like that. And what I'm hoping for is that we can work with Story Gorge, that video production company, and that they can sit in on those interviews and actually use some of that footage to create little short videos or vignettes that feature each of you that we can then roll out on social media as and really introduce you all as the new members of this bridge authority. So hoping that we can do that at the same time and save you all some time. And those we'll be scheduling those interviews probably towards the end of the month. So watch out for that. We're in the process of designing and finalizing a new logo for the Bridge Authority, and we'll have some options ready for you to review at your next meeting in 2 weeks. And then one thing that we've been doing a lot of is like pushing out all of these small press releases, and not necessarily small, but for organizations like the Oregonian or the Seattle Times, like they're probably not going to write a story on the fact that we got that $3.6 million raise grant for bike and ped amenities, right? And so our idea is to do a really big media push to regional outlets, radio, TV, and print in Seattle and Portland and surrounding areas, probably next month sometime. So that's timed right when we do our next really big federal grant submittal. And that way we can say, hey, this project is at a real inflection point, and it's there's a lot of momentum here and it's really happening. And so, and then we can say all of the, list all of these things we've pushed out via press release in the last few months. And then they have, enough to write about from a regional standpoint. So I'm really excited about that. And that sort of media coverage can really help build momentum for that federal funding. And so I'm really hoping that helps with that. One thing, after coming away from that first Friday event we worked on Friday, I think it would be helpful for a lot of us to have just a one-pager with really high-level talking points. And so some of the things that people are asking again and again, how much does it cost? When does the new bridge open? What are the tolls going to be on the new bridge? What are the tolls going to be, on the existing bridge? And what are the funding sources? Those types of things. And where will the new bridge be? And are you going to keep the old bridge up? And so just creating a one-pager with questions and answers for you guys, just high level talking points, I think will be really helpful. And I'm going to try to do that this week, actually. So as you're in these new roles and someone comes up to you at the farmer's market or the grocery store or a pub or something, you have some things to fall back on. Although I know probably most of you are very familiar with all of these things, but can't hurt to have that, just so we're all on the same page. And in that vein, we want to finalize an FAQ document we've been working on for a long time so that you can have that. And so we know that we're all talking from the same script, especially when it comes to some of those more complicated issues, especially when it comes to questions that may be better directed to the Port of Hood River, and some of those really more sticky questions. And then we can, if the talking point that we agree on is that question is better answered by the port, then that's what we'll have on our FAQ, maybe. Just those sorts of things to talk through and make sure we're all kind of speaking the same, using the same language and having the same answers. And then these are the questions we will be asking you in those interviews that I mentioned. And so this is just a way for us to understand a little bit more about your background and why you wanted to be on this government body. And so just watch out for an invite from me, and probably towards the end of the month. And we'll be, so just be prepared to chat about these topics and answer these questions. And then really we're here to support you guys and make sure that the public has all the information it needs. So please let me know if there's any way else, any other ways we can support you. And that's my email address. So feel free to reach out anytime. Any questions for me before I pass it back?
Any questions from any members or alternates? Hearing none. Thank you very much, Anna. That was great.
Sure thing.
Chair, one other thing, Anna's also going to start putting together a Monday email for the group. So on Monday morning, she will email you out any news articles or anything that happened about the bridge, just so you have it at your fingertips. So we'll try to do that every Monday, is just say, hey, here's all the articles that came out in the last week so that you're informed of what's going on. So.
Could I request that we wrap that into your weekly report in some way so that we're not getting flood in the email boxes? I have too many different organizations sending me too many different emails, and it's too easy to lose them.
Okay, next up, we're going to move to the organizational readiness.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and commissioners and alternates. Appreciate the opportunity to take. I'm Greg Holsizer with HNTB. Just a little bit by way of background. I'm a tolling consultant with HNTB. In the last several years, I've helped several organizations stand up their tolling programs, including major construction projects and things like that. Prior to that, I was the general manager and chief executive officer of 2 startup toll facilities, an express lanes and a standalone toll road that had a bridge, not across a full body of water. It was a navigable waterway, but we didn't ever see much water in there in San Diego. And then prior to that, I had a 13-year career in city government, serving as a city manager and head of development public works for 3 Southern California cities. And I'm pleased to be here today to talk about an organizational readiness process that we're recommending that the commission go through. As I've been watching the presentations prior, what we've seen already is that we've talked about design and construction. We've talked about governance. We've talked about communications. And on a startup like this, there are literally hundreds of activities that need to be thought of and need to come together all at the same time. And it doesn't just happen by accident. It happens by being intentional. So the purpose of the organizational readiness process is really to make sure that everyone in this room and the constituents you serve can sleep at night, knowing that everything that needs to be done has been thought of, and there's a schedule for it, and someone is responsible, so that there's a high level of accountability. And so the process we're recommending is a process that's very comprehensive in nature. It's very collaborative in nature, and it's both effective and efficient. So we're going to be talking about a kind of a 90-day plan to get us started here in the next few minutes. So Kelly, could I have the next slide, please? So I always like to start with the end, rather than make you sit through 10 minutes of presentation and then tell you what this is going to end up like. So what we're anticipating, the result of this process is what we call an implementation roadmap. I sometimes call it a cookbook. It's actual document that shows step by step what needs to be done in order to design, deliver, and then ultimately operate the new bridge, the replacement bridge. So at the end of this process, the end of 90 days, we'll have an implementation roadmap that includes the bullet points that you see on this slide here. Alignment among your guiding principles and goals. We are going to propose in committees to guide a lot of the discussion, decision-making process. Excuse me. There'll be key functions and deliverables and activities. associated with 5 areas that we're going to propose of focus. And then lastly, a timeline of implementation. So you know what's going to happen between now and we'll say 2028, 2029, when the replacement bridge opens. So this is what we will deliver to you in approximately 90 days. Okay, Kelly? And so this just at a high level says, what's the purpose? What are we trying to accomplish here? And as I said, it's a startup action plan that basically leads to a plan that you can hold in your hands and you can review and hold the team accountable for delivery and operations. And so the process is outlined here. We intend to propose establishing committees to lead the development and execution. We will conduct a series of interviews with the commissioners and the alternates to get your perspective, and we may end up combining them with the communications one if that makes sense. And then we'll come back to you in about 2.5 months, maybe 2 months, for a workshop where we bring the information we gathered in the interviews and share it with you, and bring our thoughts in terms of what that roadmap might look like, and then ultimately we'll bring you a document that documents all of those. So that's what this is. And really, I think that the statement that's made up on top left there is really important, is that this is your opportunity, all of our opportunity to work collaboratively, to roll up our sleeves and put your imprint, your fingerprints on this new facility as such an important piece of this community. Kelly. So we're proposing that 5 committees be formed. These committees are formed around functional areas or categories of things that need to be done in order to design, deliver, and operate this project. You can go ahead and hit the next button. There we go. So on the left, you can see we've identified 5 core areas, and you may have others. There will be some overlap, and part of the process of working with the committees will be to determine where those overlap and how decisions will be made. But obviously, engineering construction is going to be very important. Governance, in terms of selecting your executive director at some point in time, and how the organization will operate, and rules and regulations and procurement, things like that. Funding and finance, obviously that's a big area, and this area pretty much focuses on getting the facility financed and funded. And then administration operations would be how you're going to operate on a day-to-day basis, both during construction and delivery, and then when you ultimately reach operations. And this is where we would see a lot of the day-to-day finance, the chart of accounts and things like that would fall into this. And then lastly, as you just heard, communications. So the idea of the committees is that they'll identify, address, and make recommendations, and your team will bring you the issues to be considered, and we'll kind of tee them up for you and then ask your opinion. You may have some that we haven't thought of, and that's why the interview process is important. But the committee there will be one of you for each committee, that's what I'm told, who will chair that, and then we'll put that committee together, and you will lead that process. And you'll have the opportunity to bring in other resources as needed. But the idea is that you're setting the groundwork for the future. And so these will be the 5 areas of the committees that we would recommend at this point. You may want to give that some thought and see if you have some other thoughts in that regard. Kelly. So here's just an example to maybe make it a little more real in terms of what I'm talking about. So for example, on the 5 categories on the left, we're calling those functions. So you have the engineering construction functions, the governance functions, funding and finance, administrative operations, and communications. And so those are subject matters within which decisions will need to be made. And then within each of those functions or categories, there are activities. There are multiple activities that are going to have to be considered. For example, an activity under your development and delivery of the project I've listed up here is the toll system delivery. One of the parts you have the civil works, the bridge works, things like that, but there will be a tolling system that you want to procure. And again, this is just an example of something that we will bring to you as something to discuss and deliberate and make a decision on. And so, that's just one activity. And then for each activity, there are key considerations. So there are questions that will need to be asked, because you will have options for each activity. You want to go this way or that way. And so, for example, what we show here, the example here, will the toll system contract, the team that delivers that contract, will it be bundled under the Progressive Design Builders contract, or will it be procured separately? And you can argue both sides of that, and there are reasons to do one versus the other, and we'll lead you through that discussion and ultimately get a recommendation, hopefully from the committee, that the committee will then take back to the full authority. And so that's what we mean when we say key considerations, questions that need to be answered for each activity that we'll identify. And then after that, we will have deliverables. So once you make a decision, for example, in this case, once you make a decision, then the team will put together your procurement documents that will then go out to the industry to allow them to build or to propose on the project. So in this case, it would be the procurement documents for the tolling system, and that will either fall under the progressive design build RFP, or it will fall as a separate, depending on what you decide. And then lastly, there will be a number of processes that we will bring to you that we will want your direction and ultimately your buy off on. And for example, the example here is, obviously there will be a safety plan. Normally that gets built in. You ask your progressive design build contractor to provide you with that safety plan, but you're going to want to have your team, or to the extent the committee wants to see it, you're going to want to see that and approve it and ratify that. So this is just an idea of the process that we will, and what will be included in the conversations that we have with you. Kelly? And so here's the process here. We start with the committees. We'll define the functions. Each committee will have a charter, and we'll be bringing back to you, I think, in about a few weeks, a draft charters for each committee. And each committee will talk about what is the purview of that committee? What is it that you're supposed to focus on? And then what authority that you have, and where you can take autonomous decisions, and where you need to come back to the full authority, things like that. And then each committee will be assigned their category, obviously the key considerations and excuse me, the activities that we're going to be discussing with them. And then ultimately those charters will come back to the full authority, to this board here or commission here, and this commission will approve that, and then the committees will begin their work. Kelly? We will be scheduling interviews with each of you. We'll try not to take too much of your time. I anticipate we'll probably would like an hour with each of you. And that includes the alternates also. And we'll be going through questions around these categories here. So the vision and guiding principles for the facility in terms of what do you want it to look like? How do you want it to be perceived? How do you want it to operate, et cetera? How ready are you as an organization? Where you might want to contract some things out versus having them in-house. We'll have those discussions in terms of staffing and resources. And we always like to talk about, I had a mentor one time that said, worry about the downside, the upside will take care of itself. And so we'll have a lot of conversations with you about what could go wrong in your mind, and what do we need to make sure we organize and execute around to make sure those bad things don't happen. So that'll be part of the interview process also. And we anticipate those interviews will take place in the next probably 2-3 weeks or so. We can go to the next one. And so this is just an example of a question we might ask about organizational structure. This one just says, from an organizational structure perspective, what do you see as the greatest need or opportunity that will be presented to the authority as you move into construction and then operations? So it's kind of free flow thinking, but we guide you through the process because we want to get what's top of mind. We'll try and dig a little bit deeper, so at the end of the day, when we come back for a workshop, we can share with you what you said to us, and hopefully we have consensus, or where we don't, we can help you work through that. The timeline for the process is here. We're here today at the board meeting. Back in mid-July, coming mid-July, we'll recommend the committees, and we're going to begin already. We've begun developing the categories and the functions and the key considerations. And we'll be conducting interviews, and then coming in August, we'll be doing analysis of what we learned in the interviews, and planning for committee implementation, and then moving into you can see here the board meetings on October 14th, and then on the 28th, and then in September we plan a half-day workshop with you. We will come back with you and present you with the draft implementation roadmap and let you know what we heard, and that'll be really interactive for that day. And then after that point, then we'll take that all back. We'll finalize the plan to be formally delivered to the authority. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions, Greg?
Just kind of listening to what you've said, this really kind of follows an integrated project delivery type of model. Is that in the mission teams, or like functional teams and that sort of thing? Okay. Very familiar with that.
Yeah. Yes, And someone has told me it's not rocket science. I mean, it's a very well-established process. We just apply it across all the various disciplines and categories.
And just a comment, of these committees that we're thinking about here, I think it's really important that you think about, we're establishing a brand new organization that is going to be here for another 100 years. So it's really important that we get this part of it right. And I've got an old saying, go slow to go fast. So take the time now to really think through each of these committees, if you will. And if you see something, one or two that really kind of lights you up, sign up to go be on that subcommittee. The more horsepower we've got on each of these committees, the better product we're going to get. And then we bring it back to this body and we consider it and put it into place. The better we're going to be long-term organization for the next 100 years. All of us will be long gone by the time the new next bridge comes about. So I'd really encourage you to think which ones you'd like to get involved in, and that's everybody in the room. It's not just the commissioners, if you will. It's the alternate folks. We want to get you involved in all of this. It just makes it stronger.
I had a question. One, thank you for the overview. It was helpful, but I think maybe this is too soon, but I just want to put it out there in case you have these answers, because top of mind to me is it's a board of 6 with alternates, and it looked like there was 5 outlined committees. So is there already some idea of the vision? Are these committees where there's 2 either alternates or seated commissioners filling on one? Is there overlap? Because I can envision too a significant amount of meetings and times then that's being asked. And so I can't imagine that anyone's going to be able to offer more than perhaps on one committee. So top of mind to me is that level of commitment that you're expecting from all of us and how that's thought through. And then secondly, the checks and balances back to the actual authority. There's a ton of, this will be the most significant financially significant project coming into our communities. There's going to be a lot of eyes on this money being used wisely and appropriately. And so when I see the engineering and construction committee and anticipating that's not the one I'm going to raise my hand for first, but it's important to me as an authority member that we're not giving the ability for something to leave a committee and them to have the authority to sign off on anything cost related that then slips through the rest of us and our names are on it. So how do you envision when you're talking about, because my familiarity with committees at a city is that it is still at the end of the day, the council, the full council. So how are we balancing not having those types of things getting rushed through into a committee and then fatigue or just focus from those being asked to serve? If we're all only sitting on one, how is that going to work when there's 5 and there's only 6 of us?
I'll answer the second question first, and that's absolutely correct. There needs to be that accountability back to the full board, the full authority, and we will lay out recommendations in terms of what level it'll be in the charter, what level of authority the committees have. I would expect that everything would come back to the board in some fashion, at a minimum, in a report that might be on the consent calendar. But if it's an important decision, then it would probably come back to the full board. But the committee will have done a lot of legwork, kind of like the planning commission or the traffic commission, things like that. Then ultimately comes the city council in a similar manner. I would think something like that would happen. But I see Mike's got a comment.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about is, we're gonna have a $520 million project. You're gonna have a contractor burning through millions of dollars a day. We're gonna have to be nimble and quick and keeping them moving. So one of the thoughts was that these committees would have some level of authority and decision-making that would be delegated to them by the board that allows them to make some level of decision. Because if we wait for 2 weeks for the board to make a decision for the contractor, he will sit there and claim delays, and that will cost us tons of money. So there will be need to be well documented in these charters what the decision level making of these different 8 groups are, so that we can have that ability to make some quick decisions when we need to. Just waiting for 2 weeks is going to be a problematic issue.
Well, I guess I hear that, and I want to, it makes me a little nervous because I would say we as an authority are nimble. we can call special meetings. We don't need extended notice. We can convene a quorum. We also have alternates for some of this reason as well. So we can get the right people at the table and make a call. So that's again, where I think it will just be critical to review what's in these charters, coming from a place of making sure there's transparency and we're not being led to believe we have to rush something. We're not the first government entity to build a bridge. And there are these systems to make sure that the dollars are correctly accounted for. So yeah, I would just hope, I think I'm leaning towards and hoping as this work develops that we're seeing very clearly where the lines are drawn of what the committee's role is, and then ultimately where those final decisions are always protected back to the authority, knowing we can convene outside of whatever our regular calendar is.
If I could jump in on that, I strongly agree with Mayor/Commissioner Kiefler on this. The US Constitution left time for people to ride horses down to Philadelphia or to DC, and we don't live in that world anymore. I've been recently worked with many organizations that have found it appropriate to change their bylaws to acknowledge that you don't need the same concept of executive committees or these small groups that can meet quickly, because everyone can meet quickly when you have Zoom meetings, when you have online meeting ability.
No, and that's part of the reason in working through what level the group is comfortable with. And if it's, hey, these things need to come back and this is how we're going to do it, and we'll call special sessions and set those up quickly. As long as everybody, it's really just going through those interviews, having those conversations to make sure everybody is aware of what their time commitments are. Can those time commitments be divided up so that that's not overburdened for anybody? That's the reason in kind of going through this process, is so that we can all understand that come September, when this is all laid out, we all kind of know where we're going and how we're moving forward, and do that before we get into the situation where we've got a designer and contractor on board and we need to make those big decisions. So that's the kind of exactly what you're bringing up is the reason for walking through this process, to make sure we're all going in the same way.
I just had a question about the timelines that we're talking about. We're talking about creating these groups and coming back together and starting these things being formed in September. When we're talking about chasing federal funds and whatnot starting next month, is this timeline accurate? Do we need to slowly but move faster, responsibly enough that we intelligently put everything together? But does this timeline line up with our goals of acquiring federal funding for this?
So I think they do. I think one of the things that we wanted to bring up to the group as part of this discussion over the next 90 days, same thing can be said for communications. We're not going to sit and not have any communications for the next 90 days. Somehow we're going to have a decision-making ability to make a decision on a post that gets put out, or media gets put out, or funding, gets created. So we can, I think, operate under that scenario that we may have to call a special session, but it's also approval by committee can also be paralyzing. So I think if we want to talk about and have a discussion about maybe some interim leads, like communications, is there somebody that could be an interim lead in communications that could give the media folks or communications team the go ahead on releasing documents and saying, hey, yep, that's good to go. We've seen it as part of the bi-state working group of just having 3 or 4 people trying to approve a press release or a media release. It often takes us 3 or 4 days more than, the timeliness maybe needs on a quick communication turnaround. So that is something that we would like to have some discussion about is, do you want to look at some interim leads? Do you want to use special sessions? How do you want to make decisions over the next 90 days? Do you want to try to accelerate this and do it in a much quicker pace? I just concerned a little bit about that, about trying to get too much too fast, and maybe we just set up some interim ways to handle it until we get everything organized. So
we have the question of hiring an attorney, moving forward IGAs with organizations to be able to administer ourselves, which are clearly things that would fit well under that model, but are probably, hopefully are going to be near done by the time we form these committees. So curious as to how, following up on Grant's question, I'm curious as to how that's going to work.
So some of those things we're just gonna bring to you every 2 weeks at the meetings that we're gonna have. So we'll bring legal counsel. One of the things on the discussion items that's coming up is to talk about the legal counsel and how you want to proceed with that. We'll just bring that back in the 2 weeks. So we're planning to meet twice a month as long as we need to do that. If that is not timely enough, then we may need to go to every week. If we feel like that's something that's necessary to be able to make decisions or call special sessions as we need to. But the thought was over this next 90 days, we would do it on a 2-week time frame. I don't know that the decisions right now are going to be as fast paced as what they will be when we're fully into construction. And the contractor needs to know, hey, I need to do A or B. Waiting 2 weeks could be problematic if we have to do that. But that's going to be something that will work out between the next 90 days. I think everything else that we have in front of us, every 2 weeks feels like enough time to be able to make those decisions. And then just do the one-off sessions if we need to, would be my thoughts on it.
If I could take one other comment on that, is that absolutely the decision should not be a slave to the process. In some respects, the events will already be in happening and the process will have to catch up. But the idea is that we will be documenting everything so you have a good, roadmap. Some of it might be in the rearview mirror that you've already taken, but we will be making sure that those get documented. There's nothing in this process is meant to, nor should it be construed to mean we're going to slow the process down.
Any final questions? Seeing none, thank you so much, Greg. Awesome. Well done. Okay, next up, we are going to move into new business. We have on their action items. Did we have a document on the communications?
I'm sorry, we did not on the communications. That was really discussions around the email address and phone number. Just some of those items of the question on email address is we're working on a .gov that we talked about earlier. That is going to take a little bit of time because the feds have to do some approval processes. What I was told by the federal reps was it could be a few days, it could be a few months. He did not know. He said they all kind of move on their own process and he doesn't know what that process is typically going to be. The discussion was, do you want to go ahead with a .org email for all of the members? And then we will switch that to .gov or use something else in the interim until we get the .gov set up. And that's open for discussion as far as how you want us to move forward. The phone number, also, do you want to use, I think the port has the ability to set up an extension that can be used. We could use some kind of online digital phone number that goes to a answering machine. We could do whatever option you want to use for a phone number for the authority.
Are there strong opinions from anyone?
I could just say on the email, I'm sorry, on the email, I do feel strongly about us going to .gov, and it sounds like you're doing all the work to do that. I don't see a reason to set up interim before that because we'll just have to learn how to, make that interim appear on our devices, which we're going to then get rid of in a couple of weeks, hopefully. I don't imagine it's going to take that long, but so I would like to not get a second email address or a third.
Yeah, I have a question on that. I'm sorry. On the email side, if we wait for the .gov, so we don't have to do a transition, is there a way to just do like a password protected part of the hoodriverbridge.org website so that you could post in this interim, like the agenda packets or the other things you're going to send on email so that people's personal email accounts or whatever contact you have for all of us now is not getting drawn into any future public records issues or questions? Like we do need some, if we are now full operation, it sounds like there's going to be emails or questions coming to people about availability for interviews and the work of JLA. If there's, I see like a weird period where if at least there was like a protected host site where documents could be shared or doodle poll links could be given, that might get us by.
So we can, it doesn't get you out of having another password and another access thing, but our portal does have the ability to have mailboxes. I could have something set up just for the authority where we post it there. It sends you something that says, hey, this is here. And then we could do it that way. And then that way it's not completely going to you all and it's getting documented and archived on that portal site. That may be one way that we could handle that. But you will have to sign in to the portal and use your portal, which I'm gonna promote you to do because a lot of information will be there and the dashboards and other things for you to be able to get access to things, so. Okay, let's do that.
And then I had another thing on the phone. So I do think we might be better served by having a number that's not an extension within the port, like whether that's through one of these online. There's a lot of platforms out there, but I think it would be nice to just have a general, and if it's just going to a message and you're monitoring it to get outreach to people, I think it just helps to keep us separate.
And I guess, are we free to set something up and get it out to you? Is there any preferences on how we do that or anything, or we will get something set up and get it for you?
I don't see any issues with getting it set up and sent out to everybody and getting access to the portal and using the portal, because then it will actually get us all logging into it to see everything else when we do it anyways. Okay, next up, we're gonna move into HNTB amendment number 4.
So our contract is for the first year. We're doing 1-year contracts. So we are in the process. We went through a review with the port and have submitted our next amendment for the next 3 years, but we're only allocating funds for the next year. The other 2 years are really just estimated budgets. There's a lot of questions with those, so I think it's a good process to do it on a yearly basis. What's in front of you is our amendment 4 for this next year, which would run from July 23 through June of 24. We have worked with the port and Arup, who is their independent estimator, that looked at our information that we submitted, did a independent review. Their information and their memo, I think, is also in the packet. What we're looking for this next cycle is the ask is for 6.7, but there is that's not a reconciliation of unused budget in this last year of 1.8. So the total new ask was just over 4.9. So it would create a total budget of 6.7 for the next year, but an increase over what we've already been authorized for of 4.9. So, and it would bring our total contract amount to 10.3 for the first 2 years. We are within the PCE budget that has been projected out. So for these first 2 years going forward, we will have to monitor that to make sure where we're falling within that, but we will be able to monitor that on a monthly basis. We're planning to post up on the dashboard every month where we are in relationship to what this budget is, so that you'll be able to see at any time where we how we are tracking against our budget and against the project cost estimate.
Questions? Seeing no questions, would anyone like to make a motion to send this recommendation to the Port Commission to move forward with signing of Amendment 4? Okay, there is a motion by Commissioner Fox and a second by Commissioner Babbitts to move forward with recommendation to the Port Commission to move forward with Amendment 4. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, we will now move into the discussion on insurance coverage.
All right, so as part of the CFA, it talks about needing to secure liability insurance. Right now, that would be done through the port purchasing the insurance. They have talked to their current insurance carrier. They have looked at options both publicly and privately for the insurance for the authority. What they came back with was that it's not clear if we qualify for the public insurance right now. That is something that will need to be worked through our legal counsel and with the public insurance agencies in Oregon. Once that's done, then we may be able to switch, but for now we need to look at private insurance. So they secured a number of 3 different estimates Chubb's provided two alternatives. They were by far the cheapest. They had $1 million liability and a $2 million liability, which is what you see on the sheet. The questions that came out of that was, I did some background into what other local agencies are using. The port and the Hood River are 10 million liability. Washington is 20, and that's partially because Washington's tort liability laws. Chubb's, or the insurance agent, when he looked at insurance for the authority, tried to get as much as possible. 2 million was all he was able to get because of the new authority. So the recommendation would be for us, I think, to move forward with the 2 million. But that's up for discussion of whether you want to go with the 1 million or the 2 million. And it was roughly 7,000 for the 1 million and 13 for the 2 million liability.
Discussion?
I guess I'm just confused on why they would be uncertain about our ability to have public.
We're a new agency by state authority that has not been codified under Oregon law yet, is exactly where we fall. That will happen over the next year. And depending on where they put us, will define whether it's a special district or some other new definition. So it was just somewhat unclear. And when they talked to the special district, the special district insurance,
SDIS.
they were not comfortable right now because of the bi-state representation, although they do have things that are insured in their group that do have bi-state members. Because of the timing, we need some time to be able to work through that with them. We need legal counsel to be able to kind of work that through that with them. We think we'll be able to get under that within the next year, but this allows us basically to move forward and have those discussions with the special district one.
I can just clarify a little bit on that. Cities and counties in Oregon have their own insurance and self-insured, as do special districts. And the problem is we're neither. So we don't fit in the rules that those existing public insurance agencies have. So we have to work with them to either change the rules or change what we are so that we can sign on to their charters, basically.
So when they went through this evaluation, is there any penalty for using them for the first 6 months? We terminate, go to the governmental agency and get somewhat of a refund back?
I'm not sure that they would terminate it after 6 months, but I would say that I'm not sure, and I'm not sure it would be worth it to actually go through that. The Chubb insurance came in actually a lot lower than what we were expecting. Primarily, we think because the current bridge is insured through that company. And so they are familiar with the port and the project and, the area and everything that's going on with it. So that's part of the reason that we think that they came in quite a lot lower. CNA and Travelers were the other two that they got quotes from, and it was well over 20,000 for the $2 million of insurance. I'm not sure that SDAO or SDIS, it would be this special districts insurance. I'm not sure that it would be worth it to cancel after 6 months and go with SDIS. I think that at this time next year would be a good time that we'd be looking at switching over to SDIS. We were burning through a lot of attorney hours for them to just keep going in circles about this. And that was when we finally just said, look, let's just find out what we can actually get at this point. And that gives them a year now to kind of filter through this. And as Commissioner Babbitts had said, if they need to change the rules, we'll get the rules changed. You should be codified into the ORS for the 2023 revisions, which will come out early in 2024. So that will help clarify things as well, because it will give some definition in Oregon law as to what this is. Right now, you're just a House bill. And so it'll help once you're codified in ORS.
I would offer up that as soon as we get legal counsel, we ought to be getting that person to take a look at this, and that, in my view, and I may be wrong, the chance of risk or the level of risk is pretty minimal right now, but once we award a progressive design build contract, or we're in that process, the level goes up significantly.
Alternate Commissioner Nathan Duvall from Hood River. I'm looking for a little clarification, if I can, on the insurance. Is this also specific to operations down the road? Bridge is built, it's operating, so that would be another point where we would come back in and need to look at it. This policy is just for this organization to operate. Okay, do we have any sort of envisioning of what the cost is for operational insurance down the road?
We all wish it was $14,000.
Yeah, I can say the ports is about, I want to say it was right close to $375,000 for insurance this year. That is just, I mean, they literally look at every single bridge individually. So your bridge, the replacement bridge will be completely different from the existing bridge. So I don't know, but I can say that the port is paying about $375,000, and insurance is revisited annually. So policies can change, coverage can change, premiums change, everything can change on an annual basis, depending upon what direction you want to go.
Thank you. I just wanted that clarification.
Kevin?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with Debbie. The only thing I would add is your new attorney may want to consider or should be prepared to consider clarifying legislation. If you recall, when Siegel was preparing the CFA in this process, there were words of caution that the new bridge authority might need to go back just to clarify the bill so that it can be more concisely codified as a special district, or allowing itself to be eligible for those municipal pools.
So I am not concerned about what I've heard so far. So I would like to make a motion that we go ahead with the $2 million Chubb policy. In the future, I would like us to raise the limit. I'm less concerned about the dollars we're paying now than what the limit is. But for now, I propose that we go ahead with the $13,000 Chubb policy.
Okay, there's a motion and a second to move forward with the $13 million or $13,000, $2 million liability policy for public officials liability, public entity reimbursement, as well as the employment practices liability insurance. With that, is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Okay, next, we have before us the interim and co-chairs. Having reviewed the recommendation, I would entertain a motion to adopt the consent agenda item for interim directors and co-chairs. That includes the confirmation of Mike Fox and Jacob Anderson as the co-chairs of the new authority per the commission formation agreement, with the interim co-chairs from July through September as first co-chair being Jacob Anderson, and then the October through December as Mike Fox being the first co-chair. I would entertain that
So
motion.
moved.
I'll second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Make sure you're saying aye too, because he's not there. Okay, next up, we have some informational items. Do you want to go through those?
I covered those in my bridge update report. So if there's any questions, and then there's backup material within the packet, so.
Did we get all the members and alternates their written affirmations? They were completed. When I was looking at it, they wasn't done. Okay. Make sure everyone looks at the Bridge Authority roster. I'll send you a message about my name on there. And then moving on.
I'm sorry, there was one thing on that. Hood River County made alternates to go with specific commissioners. And Clickitat County did a pool.
Right.
And did first, second, third.
Yeah.
So that's okay, right? There's nothing that needs to be resolved about that.
That is okay. Each county can do it how they want. There may be some discussion about the benefits or pros and cons of those if you want to have that. I did get an email also about alternate Steve Yates has chosen to not be on the board, so Clickitat County will have to take that up at some point.
Yes, we will be taking that up. And if anyone has any recommendations based on our committees, and if you know of someone who would fit one of those committees really well that we can look at the rest of the group doesn't have, and mine might be, I'm thinking more finance related. Please get that name to me or have them get in touch with me and we'll take it in front of the BOCC. And that's Board of County Commissioners. We are getting down there, confirmation of directives. Did you get any directives? Did you capture any?
Okay, well, I believe the only one that I had, Mike had said he was gonna do a lot of stuff. And so I'm gonna hold him to what he said he was gonna do and say that's not a directive from the board. The primary directive that I had written down is somewhere because it was for me, is to research, well, I wrote down research how to pay for things. And so, yeah, so I will work on that and bring that back on the 24th as to what funding you have available, what the plan is for the existing grants, what grants are coming up. You know, I'll kind of put together a whole report on that. Okay. And that's the only one that I had was just for me. Okay.
So the IGA discussion is, Mike, are you working on figuring out what IGAs are going to be?
Sorry. The port has drafted an IGA between the port and the Bridge Authority, and we were planning to, I think, on the 24th.
I think so.
I think we're planning to bring that back on the 24th if a draft is ready.
And actually, if Kevin's available, perhaps Kevin could mention where we're at with that.
Yeah, so in talking with Commissioner Shepherd and Commissioner Chapman, before that is shared internally with the Bridge Authority, they just want to make sure that staff is not putting anything out there that they may have any problems with. So we'll do an internal review once the Port Commission or a subcommittee of the Port Commission feels that there isn't anything from their perspective that runs counter to what they're doing, then we'll get that back to Michael and to the Bridge Authority.
Yeah, Kevin, can you clarify when you expect this to come back?
Oh, I would say probably in a couple weeks. We've Kristen Campbell and Debbie have done, Kristen Campbell's the Port's legal counsel, and Debbie reviewed just some tasks, things of that nature that just needs to be reviewed with the Port Commission. And so we don't want to put anything out there to the Bridge Authority without the Port Commission having reviewed it first.
And Kevin, I think what they're asking, are we going to have this ready by their July 24th meeting, or will it need to move to their August 11th meeting? I think that's kind of what they're asking.
Yeah, right. I think it's going to be a couple of weeks, so it might be kind of tough to hit that second meeting in July. So let me get back to you on that. If not, then certainly the first meeting in August wouldn't be a problem.
We don't have an attorney to review this anyway. So we're not going to be able to go through, we're not going to be able to move forward with an IGA without having an attorney to review it for our interests. But that turns me to the legal issue. So in our consent agenda, we approved an RFQ for legal services. I read it, but I forget what the date was by which we expect replies.
So the date for getting replies back is August 1st.
And do we have a committee?
Yeah, you're chairing it now.
The- So the CFA identifies the board as the committee for now, unless you want to change that to something different.
Is there anyone who would like to serve on the committee to review the applications?
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, Arthur, is there anyone else? All right, we've got two alternates willing to step forward as well. Perfect. Okay, that is our committee to review the applications. Thank
So
you.
August 1st is when we should expect something to, we
Coming
won't be working till August 1st.
Correct.
Right, perfect.
Is there anything else for the good of the order that you can think of, Commissioner Babbitts?
I have nothing to say.
Or anyone else for that matter? Okay, I will note that our next meeting will be Monday, July 24th from 2 to 4 p.m. and we will be doing it here at the White Salmon City Council chambers again. I would also remind everyone, that we are an organization now. The Open Public Meetings Act is in full effect. So never hit reply all on an email. And if you would like to get information to everyone else, make sure it goes through Michael first and Michael can disseminate it. If you all get together for drinks, make sure you don't talk about anything about the bridge. Talk about your children and everything else.
Yeah, and you'll see if I send things out, Kevin gave me this little tidbit. I will send it blind copy to all of you, just in case you accidentally reply to all. So if it looks a little weird coming into your inbox, that's why it looks a little weird. But it's just to help prevent somebody from replying all and starting a conversation that we didn't intend to start. And then one other thing I had was we are actively doing the geotech drilling. If anybody is interested in learning more about that, seeing what's going on, get with me after the meeting and we'll set up some time for you to come out. They'll be out there for probably 5 to 6 weeks. So.
Yeah, in that regard, we have Representative Helfrich coming in tomorrow at 10:30. We're going to get some pictures of him with the barge. We've reached out to Senator Bonham, haven't responded back, and we're going after Representative McLean to try and do the same thing. And I know we tried to get Senator King, but if you guys, especially on the Oregon or Washington side, would like to do something, we're going to be out in the water for the next several weeks. So maybe a photo opportunity.
Mike. The only other thing I can, where's it coming from? Oh, you got to, you looked at it? The only other thing I can say is never put something in email that you don't want on the front page of the newspaper. For those of you who haven't spent a lot of time, everything that you write will be public records requested in the next few years. I can promise you that. With that, I don't think we have anything else for the agenda. I would usually do a round table, but seeing as it's already past 4 o'clock and we've been inundated with information, I'd like to say this has been an excellent first meeting of the new Bi-State Bridge Authority. And I thank everyone for coming, as well as everyone online. Thank you all. And thank you to the City of White Salmon for hosting us.
Yep.
With that, have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.